We're now live streaming to YouTube, hopefully, and in just a second, also Mixer. There we go. We're dropping frames. We are not. Always reassuring. Oh, YouTube just let me know we're streaming. Cool. It looks like we're working just fine. Why am I not centered in my frame? There we go. Hello, everyone. We will be live in just a few moments. Oh, I mean, we'll be starting in just a few moments. We're already live. We're just letting these stragglers come in, and we're also just setting up. Here
There's two live streams on our channel. One. Oh, that's weird. It says live now. Set reminder. Weird.
Yeah, YouTube's been really weird this week. It reset a lot of our stuff as well. Like, I looked at this live. Unless this was you, I don't know who it was, but like.
No, I don't touch it.
Someone, I guess YouTube just reset it to defaults, but everything changed. I had to do all the branding again and stuff. I guess it happened when we got unverified.
It says it's going to be 149.
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm just going to send out the tweet now because I don't care. Deal with it. You weren't mentioned as usual because I had to put hashtags in. Hashtag.
Nobody uses hashtags. Literally no one's looking at the hashtag Surface hashtag right now.
You don't know that.
I do. The last tweet was 10 minutes ago in the Surface hashtag.
That's not bad.
Surface isn't popular enough, Dan. iPhone is instant, you know.
It's because the batteries suck. Ouch.
All right. Let me get my voice recorder up. Do a test. Testing 1, 2, 3. We'll do the tap test. Testing.
Oh, yeah, I gotta do that too.
We'll do the tap test.
Test 1, 2, 3. Hey, the tap test works. We're sophisticated. Okay. Yeah, we got 1 minute.
Yeah.
We'll be stickler here.
We have to wait, unfortunately.
For the stragglers, as you call them.
I do call them stragglers. Is that not a word in the US?
No, it's a word.
Okay.
Well, we too speak English.
Can you hear music?
I cannot.
Good, okay. Someone's playing music, but it seems to be faint enough to not be picked up on the mic. The holidays come earlier. IFA 2000. We're not talking about IFA. What are we doing? All right, it's time to start.
All right.
I'm now recording.
Same here. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 149 for September 20th, 2019. Hey everyone, Deanna Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast, where we talk all things Microsoft, Surface, Windows, sometimes Xbox. This week we're also going to talk a little bit about the Versa 2, because I have one and Zach has one, and my review, I was supposed to be out this week, but instead I reviewed a laptop. But this review is almost done. I'm about 80% done with it. It's actually a pretty long review, but we'll talk about that and our experience with it, and whether or not you should buy it in 2019 if you're into wearables or in the market of. We'll also be speaking, of course, first of all, about Centaurus, the dual screen foldable device. We have to throw a dual screen part in there because the industry right now is mixed with dual screens and foldables, and we'll straighten that out, and why we expect that thing to be actually announced on October 2nd in New York City. Yes, Zach and I have strong vibes that this is going to be real, that after 2 years of talking about this topic, you're going to see Microsoft's the fruits of their labors. We'll also go through more hardware speculation about what we expect on October 2nd and what we may not expect, actually. Also, Build 2020 was announced. That'll be a short little discussion about what Build is going to be like. Also, a 20H1 build. That's the fast ring. Got another release this week with a couple of new features and little tidbits that Zach will detail for us, of course. We'll do the Versa 2 review. And then HP announced a really interesting laptop this week called the Elite Dragonfly, which is a really interesting mixture of two different product lines. And I got to play with it and see it in person. And it's a pretty big deal of a laptop. So we'll talk about why that is. But first, Zach, how are you doing on this fine fall day? I think we're officially fall now, are we?
It doesn't feel like it. It's so hot in London right now. It's like in Celsius, because I don't know the conversion to Fahrenheit. It's like 25 degrees tomorrow, which is full on summertime here in London.
That is 77 degrees.
That's
not bad.
That's pretty warm for London.
That's actually the exact weather we're having right now. Like it's going to be around 80 degrees.
This is considered quite warm, quite hot weather.
Yeah, we were cool early this week, now warmed up, which is good because I'm going away for the weekend through Monday. I won't actually be, I should be offline on Monday. I'm going to go the White Mountains. That's up in New Hampshire. It's north of us. We have these mountains that are about 10,000 feet, and there's a bunch of them. And once a year, we usually like to go and get away and go climb them. I'm going to probably bring my Panasonic Toughbook with me as well, just because I can. 10,000 feet up on top of a mountain. I'm going to go check my email because the thing has cellular connection, so it should be kind of fun. I'm actually going to probably do that just to get some awesome photos because I need to get that review done, as well as about 5 other laptops I need to review. So, but yeah, it should be very good. Plus, I got UFC on Saturday, and I bought some pumpkin spice latte beer. I'm all about the fall. I do the pumpkin spice everything. I know people lament this stuff. I'm like, being in the Northeast in New England, fall is my season, man. I embrace it. I want to drink fall. But anyway, let's get to what everybody really wants to talk about, the big news. Centaurus. Zach, you wrote a really big article this week that did very well for traffic that basically laid out what this thing is. And we want to make clear, we actually are very confident that this will be either shown or discussed in some capacity on October 2nd. And that's why we're talking about it more. And I know we've heard hints in the past and maybe this time, but this is it, right, Zach? We're actually kind of confident this is going to be a thing this time.
Yeah, it's seeming very likely at this point. I would say I'm 90% sure that we're going to see, or at least get hinted at a Centaurus device, plus the software side of things as well. In fact, I think the software side of things is even more likely than the hardware side of things at this point. But yeah, it's looking like Microsoft is at the very least going to start talking about its Windows Core OS efforts in the form of Windows Lights, also known as Santorini, also known as Modern PC. There's loads of names for it now for some reason. But yeah, this week I wrote up a sort of collection of everything that I sort of heard in just whispers across the last few months about this Centaurus device. Some of it I was from a single source, others from multiple sources, so some of this may not be accurate, but I just thought I'd throw together everything that might be possible with this device that I've heard from sources that I consider to be reliable. So kicking things off, let's start with the basics. It's a dual screen device. This isn't a single screened foldable like the Lenovo foldable that was announced earlier this year, or the Galaxy Fold. This is a device with 2 separate displays. And there's a model.
That's a big thing because why? What does that give us?
That gives us more durable displays for starters. Today, Jerry Rig Everything posted his sort of teardown or, beating up of the Galaxy Fold, and that screen doesn't last very long. It's very fragile, and that's because it's covered in plastic, because you can't have glass bending screens. They don't exist. With 2 screens, you get the ability to have glass, so they're much more durable. You can have pen support on that glass as well, which is very important for a Surface device. And not only that, it allows the operating system to sort of differentiate the 2 screens, because this device isn't like a tablet, or it's not supposed to be like a full screen tablet when it's folded out. It's a sort of courier device, just like the original Microsoft Courier. It's designed to be like a book, so you can ink on one screen and do other things on the other screen, or you can use it like a laptop by turning one of the screens into a keyboard and trackpad and the other turns into a usual laptop desktop type scenario.
Do we know if it reverse folds?
So Andromeda did, and this is supposed to have sort of grown out of Andromeda. So my assumption is yes. However, I've not had anyone confirm that it can fold backwards. We've seen patents that suggest it can do so. So Microsoft is definitely working on that, but I don't know if this Gen 1 will be able to fold backwards. I would assume it can.
Yeah, because we've seen a lot of these patents, and one of the more interesting ones is the dual camera setup. That it has basically a camera on each of those panels, which sounds weird. One of them would be a front-facing camera. So you could, because Surface always does this, right? They have a camera that faces the world, which is invaluable, by the way. If you've ever been using these devices for note-taking, because I was at, I'll talk about the HP event this week, and I used one of my favorite laptops, the EliteBook 1040 G5. I think it's just awesome. But it does have a front-facing camera. So I was using it, though, for scribbling and taking notes because it has a really good pen, but I couldn't, lift it up. It was a little big, right, to take a photo, and then because you can insert it right into OneNote. And you and I have used the Surface Go for this purpose before, and it's actually really nice. So having that front-facing, the world-facing camera is really good. You just point it up at the screen, take a photo, insert it to OneNote, and you can continue scribbling. So that's why Microsoft does it, and I think it's smart. Then you would also have the webcam, which for obvious reasons, Skype and everything like that. But then Microsoft has this patent where, so you have one on each side, but when the device folds in half, those two cameras come together and create basically a super camera. And it gets double the lens and the power. And you can now use this as like a real shooter, right? And so it's really curious if that design exists, because it can't exist if it folds closed, because you can't now take a photo if they do that. So the only way this could operate is if it reverse folds with this displays out, and now you have a display, you can use the camera, and so I'm really curious about if that exists or if that's something we'll see down the road.
Like a Gen 2 or a Gen 3. Because, a lot of these patents that we're seeing online, I more or less likely just things that they've trademarked and sort of just have so they can just have it, not to use in any products. But some of this stuff could show up down the line in Gen 2, Gen 3, if it's not in Gen 1, for example. So the two screens, when folded out, I believe, I've been told, equate to around 13 or 14 inches, which sounds about right. Think of the Surface Book's display detached, make that a foldable thing, and I think that's the sort of form factor we're going for with Centaurus. Or maybe the Surface Pro, not the Surface Book. Maybe it's 12 to 13. Anyway, it's around about there when it comes to size when folded out, which shouldn't really matter unless you're like multitasking with the two screens. So that's something you could do. Microsoft refers to these different modes you can use the device in as postures, and we actually saw them use this phrase in one of the previous Insider builds, I think, for the first time. Postures is how they're describing the different modes that these sort of foldable devices can be used in. So there's like laptop mode, for example. There's also tablet mode. So if it's folded all the way around, it's used as a tablet. It can also be used as a book. I don't know if that's called book mode or if they're calling it something else, but two screens sort of side by side, and you can use panel one and do stuff on the other thing, on the other screen. So that's what we know about the displays so far. We don't know their resolution or anything, which we don't know any of like the specific specs like RAM or like processor. We know it's an
battery
Intel
life
or battery life. We know it's an Intel powered device. If I had to guess, I'd say it's Ice Lake's next, Dan? When it comes to Intel processors, I think it'd be an Ice Lake processor if it's coming in the spring of next year. But that's just guessing at this point. But we do know it is an Intel device.
It could be, for all we know. I mean, we can't discount that there was a special chip created for this in conjunction with
That's very
Intel.
possible as well. Yeah, that is very based on Ice Lake.
Yeah, this has been in the works for quite a long time now. So it seems like there's no doubt that Microsoft had to work closely with Intel, which is something that's been going on for a while with, and we'll talk about HP later. They did the same thing.
Yeah, with that in mind, I did see a doc a while ago now that suggested that Microsoft wanted to ship a Surface with its own processor in 2020. That could be a sort of in partnership with Intel for this device, but that's just me connecting random dots that may not even go together. So anyway, that's what you think about the processor. It seems to be an Intel chip, and there's reasons for that. The first of which is Microsoft and Intel have been working quite closely together on these dual-screen foldable devices for Windows for some reason. I don't know why they chose Intel to work with. I guess Intel already sort of had the mindset.
I was going to say, I mean, we've seen prototypes from Intel, proof of concept devices. The Lenovo one is an example of that. That too runs Intel. And so, and if you look at and Lenovo has a history of this. The Yoga Book 2 in the first yoga book are both also Intel devices, even though you and I are both like, why don't you guys use ARM? It seems like this would be a perfect device for ARM. But the reason is the Yoga Books 2 original design comes out of an Intel base. It's a reference design. So yeah, my guess here is that, yeah, Microsoft is absolutely working with Intel very closely on this. Intel's gotten very serious. I mean, we can you and I prefer ARM for certain things, but we could say at the very least it's having the desired effect we want, which is what Project Athena is. They're focusing on instant on, fast resume times, long battery life, always connected LTE. That's what they're now focusing on. And there's probably a good reason for that, which is Qualcomm is on the scene now. So I'm actually pretty happy about this. I don't care if I choose Intel or Qualcomm, as long as I get the results that I'm looking for in a mobile device.
Yeah. So the other reason why we think it's an Intel device is the operating system. Windows Lite, or Windows Core OS in this specific configuration, isn't yet ready for ARM. And that sounds worse than it is. The actual operating system is ready for ARM. Of course it is. Windows 10 and ARM exist. It's very simply, it's a thing that can happen. But what isn't ready is the layer that runs Win32 programs for ARM. So for those who don't know, Windows Core OS, and specifically Windows Lite here, will be able to run Win32 programs, but it's a bit different than how normal Windows 10 runs them. They are sandboxed and containerized, for one, and they're also emulated in a way because not everything is there in the modern OS to run these legacy programs out of box. So there's a layer in the operating system that allows those programs to run, that sort of emulates them and stuff. And Microsoft, out of the gate at least, wants to make sure that the programs that are running on Windows Lite are native to the architecture. So x86 and x64 only at launch. And that's an Intel device, right? Or an AMD device. It's not ARM. They're not ready to start testing the ARM emulation on top of emulating the legacy programs as a whole. That's a thing that will come later. I don't know how much later. I don't know. Maybe it will be ready by the time Windows Lite launches, but it's not ready as of right now. So that's another reason why we are assuming it's an Intel device.
And I presume, being a Type C device, you'll be able to have display out, connect to, there will probably be some form of continuum with this, I imagine. It doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I'd be surprised if they don't. I think they call it productivity mode now, and maybe that's what they'll call the laptop mode. It's productivity mode, where the base of it becomes like a virtual keyboard trackpad, and the top half becomes a more traditional desktop environment. Speaking of that keyboard trackpad sort of setup, a lot of people read that and was like, I'm typing on glass is terrible. Why would you want to do this? I have heard Microsoft is working on some kind of accessory that you can lay on top of the display that gives it tactile feedback like a normal keyboard. But I've only heard that from one source, and that was a while ago, and I don't know if that's something that they continued with or is going to ship.
I mean, I don't want to spoil too much here, but other OEMs are doing the same.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just going
I
to say.
figured as so. Yeah, this sounds like something that a lot of OEMs are thinking about, because everybody, you immediately think typing on glass because typing on a phone is fine because you're using your thumbs more or less, but typing on an actual large device like an iPad or something is difficult for some people. I actually find it quite easy. I can do touch typing, and I actually prefer it on the iPad, just typing on the screen.
It's okay for Twitter and short messages and Slack or something like that, but obviously if you want to bang out a paper, typing on glass is going to take its toll on your fingertips.
Sure.
But if you have some kind of magnetic keyboard that lays across the screen, with actual physical keys, that changes things.
Yeah. Regarding bezels, I have heard that the bezels are very similar to the iPad mini, if there were obviously two of them combined. So the sort of outer bezels will be smaller than the head and the chin, but the middle bezels will be actually smaller than all the other bezels. So there's only a few millimeters between both displays, which is a good thing. But otherwise, it's there are bezels on this device, which should be expected. This is a Gen 1 device. It has two screens. There's going to be a very complicated hinge mechanism that's part of this design. If it didn't have a head or a chin, I'd be quite surprised. But yeah, Gen 1 should have some noticeable bezels. I don't think they'll be huge, but they will be there, so don't be shocked if you see them. It will have rounded corners on the actual chassis, just like the Surface Go does. I think that's a design trend we're going to see going forward with Surface devices. I don't believe the displays are rounded. I know that was a thing a few people asked me, and I did ask around, and as far as I'm aware, the actual displays are just cornered like normal, which I was kind of hoping they'd be rounded like on the iPad Pro, but I guess that's a thing. That's, some people like that, some people don't. There should be a magnetic strip for a pen as well. And what's special about this is that I've heard, and was actually saw in a patent today as well, that wireless charging will be coming to the Centaurus and the Surface Pen. So you'll be able to stick the Surface Pen to the side and it will work and charge just like it does on an iPad Pro if you're using an Apple Pencil, which is pretty nice. Regarding the outer shell, the sort of material using, I've not had a concrete answer on this. Originally, I was hearing Alcantara, which, makes sense since it's sort of like a book. But at the same time, if it can rotate all the way around, then you can't have the Alcantara cover the whole back. So maybe it's not Alcantara. I've also heard glass is a possible material being used for the outer shell, which would be very interesting. But yeah, so we don't have a concrete answer on that. But Alcantara and glass are the two that I've heard so far.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope for a kind of a fabric, even a faux leather, vegan leather, or something like that.
Yeah, the only issue I see is if it can fold backwards, it'd have to wrap around each half instead of going across the spine like an actual book would, because you wouldn't be able to fold it all the way back, right?
Yeah, they could just have each one just have its own back.
On the software side of things, we know it's running a Windows Lite or a sort of configuration of Windows Lite that's designed for dual screens. There's something Microsoft has been working on with the OS called Focus. Maybe it's not called Focus, but that's how it's been described to me, where the OS is smart enough to know what you're doing and focus sort of system elements on that screen. So if you're using the left screen, for example, things like the start button and the system tray are on that screen, and then if you start using the right screen, then all those elements shift over there as well, which is kind of handy, so you don't have to reach over to the other side for all the start button stuff and whatnot. It's wherever you're currently working. Regarding its name, we still don't know the name of the OS. Project S is something Walking Cat found in regards to Surface this week. He reckons it's a device, and I haven't actually heard anything from sources about this, but if I had to guess, Project S might be like the marketing code name for Windows Lite, but who knows at this point.
I'm real curious about the name.
I don't know. I don't think they'll have a name for us on October 2nd. I'd be surprised if they do.
Yeah, so this gets down to where they'll talk about using their language for like Surface Hub 2 and HoloLens, which is it runs a custom Windows experience. That's what they'll call it. They'll say it.
I'll be curious if they say Windows. That's the biggest thing. Are they going to actually talk about Windows and call it Windows, or are they just going to be like, here's a new OS experience, it's very modern. Oh, and by the way, it can run Windows programs, and that's at the extent that they refer to it as Windows. I will be interested to see how much they go into this, because obviously, while we are expecting them to talk about Centaurus and this Windows Lite stuff, how much will they talk about it? It might just be a 2-second hint at the end, or there might be a full-on 15-minute segment where they go, right, here's our plan, here's what we're doing, here's when it's coming, etc., etc. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see.
All I know is whatever they call it, half of you will like it, and half will think it's garbage.
Right. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Like, it could be the ultimate name, and it's going to be like that. You and I both advocated for Skylight OS, or even just Windows Skylight. I think that's kind of a cool thing. We like Skylight because it's still technically a window, but it looks up to the sky. It looks at clouds. Like, it just kind of works on many levels. Mm-hmm. Some people brought up the whole but Microsoft got sued by Sky for SkyDrive. But I think Skylight. I think it'd be hard for Sky to trademark Skylight.
Yeah, I think they got away with SkyDrive. Telling Microsoft to stop using SkyDrive because it was SKY with a capital D for drive. So it was like Sky the brand and then Drive. Whereas Skylight wouldn't have to have a capital L. It's just one word. So maybe that's how they can get around it. If I was a lawyer, that's something I'd be looking
or if
into.
they call it Windows Skylight, it's now you're using Microsoft's own trademark in front of it. So I don't feel like that's a slam dunk criticism for not calling it Skylight, but we're not lawyers, so who knows?
Yeah.
I just hope we just both hope it's not called Windows Lite.
Yeah, please. I just don't call it Windows Lite, Microsoft, because this is gonna bury it before it even gets started. A version of Windows that's less. I don't want that.
Yeah, that's definitely a problematic one. And then you have the people who are like, they need to just dump Windows as a name because it has so much negative baggage. And I'm not completely on board with that, just because, there's some negative stuff associated with Windows, but Windows is also associated with being a big brand name for an operating system that a lot of people know. So it's like it's a double-edged sword. I don't think the Windows brand is so sullied that they need to ditch it. But I do think there needs to be some proper differentiation here. I don't know. It's a complicated problem. I don't think there's a right answer.
I'm very curious to see how Microsoft actually does market this and talk about it to the public. So yeah,
Wait,
like I already.
hold on. Someone's asking, is there information from Microsoft about the return of Windows Phone? It's not ever returning. That's the
Yeah,
information.
it's not anytime soon anyway. Yeah,
And not in the
do not be
form factor.
expecting a phone on October 2nd because it's not happening.
Right.
Unless they surprise us with an Android phone, which I'm doubting. I've not heard anything
Yes.
about that. So regarding the Win32 programs, like I said, they are sandboxed and containerized. They do run on Windows Lite. However, I'm unsure if you'll be able to install just unaltered exes from the web like you can on current Windows 10. My assumption is they'll have to be either repackaged as an MSIX or placed in the Microsoft Store. But like I said, I've not been able to confirm or deny this. So for now, we have to wait and see. But we do know they would definitely be able to run Win32 programs,
Which is
good
such
thing.
a weird thing too. I mean, granted, and holding the Lenovo device, which is like I think a 12 and a half or 13-inch tablet, like it's a pretty good sized device.
Yeah.
But it's not a device I immediately felt like, oh, I need to install like, you know, classic executable apps on it, right? So there's definitely a continuum here of uh, screen size related to app usage. Basically, the bigger the screen, I sit in front of a desktop. I'm in a browser all day. I don't even use that many apps. I'll use a few dedicated ones here and there. But as the screens get smaller, you want to switch to sort of more dedicated apps. And as the screens get smaller, Win32 apps become less fun because they're not meant to be run necessarily on
Yeah.
devices that are 10 inches or smaller. Now, this may not affect it here so much, but you know, I feel like it's more of a fallback. Oh, you can run these old things, but you're going to probably try to stick to stuff that's available in the store where possible.
Or
Um,
on the web with PWAs, because remember, this operating system is very web focused. So I think it might even prioritize web experiences over, apps from the store. But we'll have to see how that goes.
which is fine. I mean, I've talked about this on Twitter. Right now on my taskbar, I have pinned Google Calendar, Twitter, Airtable, Slack, Mixer, and I think there's one or two others. They're all PWAs.
Yeah.
I'm just using the Edge Canary PWAs for all my main apps now, and I'm actually very happy with the experience. And for people who need Google stuff, who they don't have apps, just go download Edge and try the PWA, or use Chrome if you're still on Chrome, and just try install Google stuff as a PWA, pin it to your taskbar, and be wowed about how much of a good app experience it actually is, at least
Yeah.
on a desktop and laptop.
So finally, regarding the software, the talk of Android apps has been a thing around Centaurus. Will it be able to run Android apps? This is Microsoft. This is something Microsoft has definitely been considering, but I don't think it's going to show up as a native feature of the OS. And what I mean by that is, instead, Microsoft is supposedly, is what I've heard. I don't know if this is accurate or not. Microsoft is building an API layer for Windows Core OS and indeed Windows Lite on top of that, that allows developers, third-party developers, to build their own sort of virtualization technology that can tap into the OS and sort of integrate itself. So BlueStacks, for example, could come along and build a native client for Windows Core that when you install an app through BlueStacks, it actually shows up in the start menu and whatnot. But like I said, I don't know if they've actually decided to go with that route or if they're going to go and doing their own native emulation on Windows Lite. Or they might not do any. They might just launch and there's no Android support at all. Which, to be fair, I'd personally prefer, because I do not see the use. I don't see the point in Android apps on a Windows device. I think it's, unless it's a smartphone, there's no point. That's why Android tablets don't work. And I
Yeah.
just don't see the point on Centaurus.
Yeah, people have such a fascination with this idea, but we've
I
talked
know.
about this endlessly about how like emulated Android apps on non-native systems, it's just really not that great.
No.
And you also have to immediately think this is more of a PC, like this is a new device. And the problem is people it's hard for them to think outside of their traditional experiences. It's like, so it's like a laptop? Oh wait, no, it's like a phone. And it's like it's not really either of those things. It's a new device.
It's a new category, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Courier concept and what they were trying to do, that's what it is. It's a digital notebook that is meant to be used with a pen for note taking, for creation. It's not a laptop. It can do laptop-ish things. It's not a cell phone, but it'll probably definitely have LTE connectivity to it and can do Skype and, maybe, I don't know if it could do phone calls. But like, people really need to stop thinking about this stuff as like pigeonhole it into current device paradigms. It's different. It doesn't make it good or bad, right? Yeah, I've been pretty open about this. Like, I'm just curious, is this something I'm going to use in my daily life? Can I use this in my workflow? And that matters because everybody talks about the iPads and how awesome they are. I have an iPad 9.7 here. It hasn't been turned on in weeks. I don't ever use it. And it's not a slight against Apple. Their hardware is fantastic. The operating system is good. I do have a problem with the UI a little bit, but it's a great device. It just doesn't fit in my lifestyle. I just don't need it, right? So this kind of device is going to be like that. Some people are going to find tremendous value in this, and a lot of people won't, and that's fine. I wrote an article, I think it was beginning of the week, talking about how like people like to throw this word niche around. Oh, it's too niche. It'll never succeed. All technology starts off niche, right? I mean, I had a smartphone in 2005. No one had smartphones back then except like business people. It was very niche. And everybody told me this thing wouldn't succeed and who cares? Smartwatches are niche. Like, and I made the argument there's two types of like niche technology. There's the niche that just starts off, it's new. People are skeptical. A lot of people ask, why do I need this? I don't care. And it's just small, and then it eventually grows over time and then becomes mainstream. So if you didn't have a smartphone in 2005, you were normal. Now you're weird in 2019. Then there's the other kind of niche, which is there are just specialized tools in the world that are meant for a small group of people. My Panasonic Toughbook I brought up earlier. Panasonic told me 1% of the market is tough books, basically. And now that is 80, they control 80% of it. It's a total niche market. They've been making them for 20 years, right? There's over 20 tough books that they've made now. And if you look at medical tools, so sometimes it's okay to have niche tools and technology. It doesn't mean it's bad. Now, Microsoft is like, we created something that every human being on this planet is going to want. We're going to launch this thing. It's going to be on Best Buy shelves. It'll be in Walmart, and it's going to be sold everywhere. And then it doesn't sell. Okay, that's an example of a niche failing, right? I don't think, but that's not Microsoft. Microsoft is very conservative with how they launch new devices. I guarantee you, this thing will probably launch, where, Zach? United States first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe UK, maybe Australia. And then it'll be like, and we're going to slowly expand markets over the next couple months. And people are going to be throwing their hands up and like, stupid Microsoft. But they're going to do that for this very reason of they're going to gauge actual interest and whether or not people are happy with it.
Yeah.
And if they are, they'll expand. If not, they'll keep it niche. But don't say something, just because it's new and specialized and you don't know how it fits in your life, it's going to fail. That's not an actual argument, because every piece of technology pretty much has come along and people have said the exact same thing. And this gets back to innovation here, which is true innovation is not giving people what they want. It's giving people something they didn't know they needed. That's a difference. And the fact is most people, when you ask, like, so what would you create, are totally clueless and dumb on it. That's why innovators are they're so hard. It's such a hard thing to do, because they're creating something that most of us were like, I didn't know I kind of needed that thing in my life. That's really awesome. That's why Steve Jobs is heralded as a, amazing inventor and creator, whether you agree with it or not. But I think it's true. So I just want to throw that out there. And I also find it just funny that people are so quick to have an opinion on this, when although you just gave a lot of information, there's still a ton here we don't know about.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if it's going to be awesome. I'm going to do what a normal human being does. I'm going to wait till October 2nd. I'm going to show up there. I'm going to actually hopefully hear a spiel. I'm going to hopefully touch it or see it in person. And then I'm going to make an opinion off of it. And if you're not doing that, you're wrong. You just have a bad outlook in life on how you treat things.
I don't think they're going to let you touch it on October 2nd.
Probably not.
The reason
but
I say
eventually
that,
I will.
The reason I say that is because you just mentioned, it going on sale. Although they might be,
Sure.
it seems to be very likely going to announce on October 2nd, we're not expecting this to be made available until sometime next year. Not even like spring, summertime. That's right. Half a year away, more than. And there's multiple reasons for this. One, Windows Lite, the OS it runs isn't ready yet, and it won't be until at least 20H1's RTM. So that's why it's not coming till next year. Plus, I think the Intel chips that they want to use aren't all there yet and all that stuff. So Yeah, so even if they do announce it on October 2nd, I would be surprised if we get to go hands-on and whatnot.
Although I got hands-on with the Lenovo's foldable.
That's true,
So,
and also the HoloLens. You got hands-on with HoloLens way before it
yeah.
came out. So maybe. I'm just saying, let's set expectations just in case
Yeah.
they don't
But
let us touch it.
and someone brought up a comment here, what's a computer, Apple, as a joke kind of thing. But, to Apple's credit, that's a good question that I've been trying to push for a long time, which is the face of what is mobile computing is changing. Whether you think it's true or not, it absolutely is. Everybody in the industry knows this. Consumers always the last to know. They're still fixated on iPhone 11, traditional form factors. That's fine. But the industry is trying to move beyond this. 5G is going to change things. All the new manufacturing techniques with microchips is changing things. All this is going to have an effect on what we consider to be a computer. And desktops and laptops still will have their role, but we are moving towards this idea of like an actual computer that you could take along with you that folds up and connects to the internet all the time. And you have to think this because, again, think 5, 10, 15 years out from now, what do we do? What is it going to be a computer then? It's a really legit question that people in these industries are trying to answer. And we have clear direction. I think, foldable and dual screen devices is going to be one of those big areas.
Yeah. So that's basically everything we think we know about Centaurus. I'll be interested to see how much of this is accurate and inaccurate when it comes to unveiling day.
Sure.
I am super interested in how they're going to talk about this. Are they going to go all out and just be like, hey, this is it. Here's the device, here's the operating system, and here's everything you need to know? Or are they just going to be like the Project Scorpio unveiling for Xbox One, where it was like, here's like a shadowy figure that we'll talk more about in 6 months' time. I will be interested to see how they go about it. But yeah, I'm super excited for this. It sort of leads nicely into our second segment for the podcast. Some more speculation around the October 2nd event. We've already done this, I believe, 2 episodes ago, maybe, or 1 episode ago. But I just wanted to do a slight update to it because we've had, there's a little bit more information out there now about it. Starting off the Surface Book 3, I was relatively confident before that we're going to see a Surface Book 3 at this event. Now, not so much. A few people have come forward and suggested that there is no Surface Book 3 in October. I would be sad if that's the case because the Surface Book 2 is the device that's in
It'll be 2 years old.
Yeah, it needs an update. It needs 10th gen. What's going on, man? But perhaps they're waiting for a bigger update when there's a slight redesign and
maybe they also just need something to launch in the spring.
You're right, yeah.
Because they usually do. Although I would say we're not expecting Surface Go. Right. And Surface Go for spring would be also a viable candidate.
That's true. Yeah. So speaking of, although this isn't confirmed and these are just all rumors at this point, a spring event is kind of like possible at this point. And at that event, we're expecting updates to the Surface Studio, possibly the Surface Book if it's not in here in October, the Surface Go, and obviously Centaurus will be there in full force as well. So that will be quite the interesting event in spring. Other things we're expecting. So a new Surface dock is something, I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but a new Surface dock is something that I have heard about. And the reason I bring it up again is today, Microsoft just released a brand new Surface dock firmware update tool, which is kind of interesting. So unless they're planning to refresh that product line, why would they do that? So look out for a new Surface dock on October 2nd. The other thing, what's the other thing? A new keyboard and mouse, I believe, is on the cards. And some sexy new Surface colors, Dan. Sexy new colors for Surface line,
which are brown, polka dots, lime green, burnt yellow.
So for those who don't know what I'm referencing here, I heard earlier this week that some new colors are coming to the Surface line, specifically the accessories. I don't know if the actual surfaces will be these colors.
The accessories almost always match the
right,
surface.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So I don't know which or what, but the accessories and I guess the product lines themselves will match in some way. But I called them sexy new colors because A, I'm not allowed to tell you the colors, and B, it's just a description. I wasn't actually saying they're sexy. I'm just listen. It's fine, okay.
I just cringe a little. I get why people say when referring to technology is sexy.
Yeah.
But I cringe every time.
Dan, the iPhone 11 is pretty sexy.
It's pretty sexy. I just it's reserved for other humans talking about humans. That's it. It's a sexual reference. It has sex literally in its name. And when you say sexy and you're referring to, it's just fetishizing tech, and I find that bizarre.
Well,
I get it. I'm not, listen, if you want to say sexy, it's fine. And
Dan,
sexy colors was even weirder because I don't
I
know what a sexy color
I
is.
apologize greatly. It was just a word. It was a filler word because I
Is it seductive
just
red?
saying new surface colors is boring. It's like I want to like emphasize this new sexy colors. And basically for some reason this blew up and everyone's now making fun of me for saying this. But I
That's gonna be like their advertising campaign. It would be on their website. Microsoft brings the sex with the new Surface.
yeah, like space blue or something. But yeah, no.
I do want like, well, they have the Cobalt. Cobalt is kind of cool, but I would like, and we'll talk about this with HP's device because that device uses like an iridescent blue. It's crazy looking. It's such a crazy color that it messes up my digital sensor, my camera. It doesn't like the camera sensor freaks out on. It's like I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But it's definitely I like a pretty cool like a Surface Pro like in blue would be kind of neat. I think.
Yeah.
It'd be sexy even.
It would be sexy, yes. So yeah, the Surface Pro, Surface Laptop are the ones that are most likely to be getting updated at this event. We're not expecting huge design changes. We're expecting USB-C finally. Now I heard originally that the Surface Connect port was going away on everything, but apparently that might not be the case for one of them. I can't remember which one. But yeah, I believe one of them will be losing the Surface Connect port in place of USB-C, and one of them will be keeping it and also have USB-C. I don't know which. But yeah, I think that covers Surface earbuds. We talked about this already. I think we're expecting those. And apparently there's been word of a Surface speaker of some kind. I'm guessing this would be, if it is a thing, it would be a device aimed at sort of the meeting room and sort of businesses in that sort of way. I don't think this would be a consumer Alexa competitor of sorts. I'd be
Is it a
surprised
new
if it
Cortana
was.
speaker?
You're right. Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So that's basically what we're expecting for this. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this as a whole is because Microsoft has announced dates for Build 2020, and I find that very interesting. So the dates are May 19th to 21st, 2020 in Seattle once again. That shifted a couple of weeks from where it usually is. It's usually at the very start of May. And I believe there's a reason for that. The first and only reason is because Google is now doing its I/O event at the beginning of May for some reason. So Microsoft wants space this year. The last 2 years, they've either just had no choice because they've already booked them for the years ahead, or that they didn't think it was worth the hassle of moving it because the announcements weren't, super huge. But if Microsoft is planning to talk about Windows Lite on October 2nd, in any capacity, whether it's just a hint or something more, they are going to inevitably end the show with, we're going to talk more about this and Build. So go to Build.
And maybe Ignite.
And maybe Ignite as well. Yeah.
I feel it gives them two ways. Ignite, they can talk a little bit more about it, and then Build really goes into the developer deep dive API stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So that's basically what we are expecting / hoping for to see at this event. Is there anything that's not being talked about that you're really hoping for?
Not really. I mean, I really do hope for, I'm still 50-50 on this, the whole Surface Pro LTE version that's ARM based.
Yes, I do hope for that as well.
I mean, I really want that device, but I'm so skeptical that they're going to do that. I still find it weird that they would mix processor SKUs or processor versions in the same SKU or the same Surface family. Just because there's obviously still a few issues left with running ARM, even as HCX runs at a Core i5 level. It's supposed to be pretty good and all this, but there's still going to be some things you can't run on it, right? So and that's fine. I use ARM. You now have an ARM device. They're fine if you're working. I just find that'd be a weird thing for them to do as much as I want them to do it. So, and the Surface team I know is pretty conservative, and I just feel like they would just be like, no. And we've also seen Intel push LTE big this year, right? I talked about the Yoga C640, which was recently announced. The sequel to the C630 was an ARM device. Now it's an Intel 10th gen device with optional LTE. From a manufacturing perspective, it's not just dropping in a chip, right? It's not like, oh, let me just change this one thing out. It's a completely different board. And it's going to from a manufacturing perspective, it seems like it complicates things. It's versus what they did before, the Surface Pro 5 was with LTE. And what was cool about that was they made the Surface Pro 5 fanless. So if you bought that device, there's actually inside like a big gap where there's nothing there now. And you get a quiet machine that runs very well. And then they're like, we'll make an LTE version. And now where that fan was, they dropped in the Intel modem and bingo, now they got their LTE version. Compared to for manufacturing costs, that must have been just way simpler to do versus like changing out the whole board, the battery design, the input. I don't know. That's why I'm like real skeptical of that rumor as much as I want it to be true. And if it's not true, I still just really, really want like a Surface ARM
Yeah,
device.
it needs to happen at this point because Microsoft has been championing this whole always on, always connected, long battery lives, and they don't have a hero product to showcase this. And Centaurus won't be it because it's an Intel device, so it will still won't have the always on thing. It will fall asleep eventually and have to power on again. But, the Surface Pro, I think, should be the device that kicks that off because that's what started it all, right? That was the Surface Pro.
Part of me agrees with you, but part of me is also like, again, with the Surface, the Pro moniker, you know.
But Pro, there's been a lot of discussion about this around the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro specifically, being like, is it really a Pro device? Because remember what the iPhone stands for. The iPhone is simple. It's supposed to be for everyone. It's not a Pro platform, and it never will be. So calling it the iPhone 11 Pro is kind of funny because it has an extra camera. But lots of like professional photographers have been like, yeah, but the actual camera app sucks. You can't do all these like small tweaks and stuff that you would be able to do on a professional sort of great camera. So it's not the Pro moniker is just rubbish at this point. It means nothing to no one.
I still think if there was one device that should get this, would be ARM, would be Surface Go.
It's Andromeda.
Yeah, or Andromeda. But I feel like the Surface Go would be the right device really to launch this with. Unfortunately,
the HCX just doesn't fit that product line.
Yeah, there's the pricing issue. Could they get it down to $399 still with an 8DX? No. I don't think so. Unless, they could do an 8CX without LTE.
Or they could do a Surface Go with a Snapdragon 850 or a 7CX, which is rumored. Because I would also take that.
Yeah, I would too. That's the only surprise. I would love for them. I would actually be okay. Surface Pro 7, Intel Core i5 with LTE. I'll take that. Actually, and I also hope it's not like launches 8 months later because that would really piss me off.
Don't do that. Just don't sell it if you're not going to launch it at the same time.
Like if it's like 6 weeks after the regular Pro, that's fine. I can deal with that. But don't do this nonsense of like 6 months. I don't think that'll be the case because
summer 2020. It's like no, stop it.
But I would really love for them to be like the surprise I would like to see besides Centaurus would be like and Surface Go ARM. Like that would be cool because the Surface Go is has such potential. Thin those bezels out a little bit, keep the same overall design, throw in that better ARM processor with really good battery. Like that's a cool device now, right?
Yeah.
It's almost there.
See, my question is, what's more important, fitting in that ARM processors for the Surface Go or trimming off $80 to match the $329 iPad or $70?
Yeah, I still feel people would see value in using a Windows device.
That's true. Yeah.
But you still don't forget, even if you trim off that amount, you still got to buy the keyboard, which is like
yeah. But you got to do the same with the iPad as well.
So it'll never actually be equal. The same thing with Apple, right? I was looking at the iPhones today. It's like, oh, you want a case of that? Yeah, maybe I will. Oh, $39? It's like, come on. Let me go on Amazon. I'll buy one for $8. Thank you.
Yeah, $8. Yeah.
So, but that's a surprise. Surface Studio, we're not expecting an update.
Right. My one thing that I'm really hoping for that no one's talking about, because we know it's a thing that Microsoft wants to do, and if I had to put money on it, I'd guess spring for this. But fingers like my hopes and dreams, I would hope for a Surface monitor at the October 2nd event. I would buy that in a heartbeat straight away.
Sure, I'm sure a lot of people would too. Someone's mentioning the 7CX. That's a possibility. But we haven't. That's nothing official, right? So
right, it's just rumors at this point.
But it could very well happen. This is what's great about this event. Like we know what we know, but there's a lot we don't know, right? So for all we know, Microsoft could get on stage and be like, "Here's a new Surface Go 2. It runs the new Qualcomm 7CX, which is a brand new chip. By the way, Qualcomm's here to talk about it. Like that could absolutely totally happen, right? Unfortunately, we haven't seen or heard of any indication that's going to be the case. Doesn't mean it can't happen, though.
So the other reason why we're sort of expecting this to be quite a big event this year compared to previous Surface ones in the last two, I think were quite small, is because Microsoft has finally announced that they will be live streaming this event, and the last two events they didn't do that, and primarily because the announcements they just weren't big enough. You know, the 2017 event was just Surface Book 2, more or less, and there was nothing else there from my memory. Maybe there was a few accessories and whatnot. And then the 2018 event was just spec bumps for the Surface Pro and Surface laptop line, plus Surface headphones. Again, not an event really worth streaming. This one they are streaming, so they already think, and this tells you straight away that Microsoft thinks that what they've got to talk about is a big deal. Plus, Microsoft is actually quite good at setting expectations to media about these events. In the past, especially so a great example of this is the Andromeda stuff. When Andromeda was a thing,
or last year, they purposely was like, there will be no Surface phone.
Yeah, they said
we'll just get that.
Yeah, so they set expectations as they announced that event to media. They sort of told us on the slide, like, hey, by the way, there's no Surface phone. Whatever you've been writing about this year, it's not happening. So they haven't done that this year, which is worth pointing out. You know, they've not given us any hints or any sort of...
Yeah, there's no, like, guys, bring it in a little bit.
Yeah, the things you've been talking about, don't expect it. They've not said that this year.
Yeah, they do hate when, like, sometimes in the press we speculate a little too much, or maybe, like, we're hearing a Surface car. They're doing a whole car, right? Like, Microsoft at some point may be like, hey, Dan, just on the on background here, there's no car coming.
Yeah,
so just,
right.
like they do sometimes do that. They don't confirm what is coming. Although, we've had hints that, and there may be even a special guest or two at this event too.
It's me, guys. They're announcing that I'm the new CEO and Windows Phone is returning.
Right. Yes. I mean, we are importing you from the UK to help us cover
I'm flying
it,
6,000 miles to see these new announcements. They better be worth it, Panos.
And I can take you around New York City and get you.
I'm actually quite excited. I'm quite excited for this. Jason's in the chat. Who told you about the Surface car? Yeah, I know. We know about it, Jason. We know it's coming. I've driven it. No, I can't even drive. So
you can't drive.
I live in London. Why would you drive? What's the point?
It's just a rite of passage, man.
Okay. Well, I'll get to that straight away. Anyway, that's basically our chat done for the October 2nd event. I think it's fair to say we're all quite excited for this event.
Yes, should be good. I'm a little worried actually, because it's like sometimes when it's just one product,
it's easy.
I can manage that. It's like, all right, I got this, right? When it's like this, may be like 3. Surface Pro, and then Centaurus, and like there may be like 3 or 4 products here. That's a lot of work.
That's why we technically have 2 videographers on the ground this year. Yes. So that should help quite a bit as well. But yes. All right, so we move on to the build news of the week, and not the conference. We're talking about the actual builds that are shipping. Build 18985 has released to the fast and skip ahead rings. This is a 20H1 build and has some minor improvements here and there. So starting off with Bluetooth, Microsoft has yet again improved the Bluetooth pairing experience. I think they're trying to match what's on iOS, where you just sort of open the AirPods and it's like, they must be yours, connect. They're sort of doing that now with Surface.
So this is this is based off what's called Swift Pair, I believe it's called. It's a development in the Bluetooth protocol that basically allows devices to connect faster with like one click, and it's just like a new option. And Windows 10 is now adopting that. So it works with certain products, certain modern products. I've used it. It's cool. Basically, you put your device into pairing mode, a notification pops up and it goes, hey, we see there's something new that's in pairing mode. Would you like to connect to it? And I guess now with this update, they actually added dialogue buttons, because before you'd click that and then it would go to Bluetooth in settings. Now you just hit like yes or no or accept decline kind of thing, which is a streamlined process. I actually like this a lot.
Yeah, they've removed one of the notifications, so there's one less button to tap when this is happening now as well. It's also apparently faster. And they've added a dismiss button, so if you don't want to do it,
seems faster.
It does seem faster, yes. And the device, they've actually listed the devices that actually support this right now, which is kind of handy. So the Surface Ergonomic Keyboard, the Surface Precision Mouse, the Microsoft Modern Mobile Mouse, the Surface Mobile Mouse, the Microsoft Arc Mouse, and the Surface Arc Mouse, and the Surface headphones. This has just made me realize that their branding for their accessories is all over the place.
Oh yeah, I wrote about this a while ago regarding the Arc Mouse, because there's like a couple of Arc mice. There was just a Microsoft Arc mouse, and they were selling both the Microsoft one and the Surface. And I think the Microsoft one was black, the Surface one was gray, but they're basically the same. And then there was also like another name because there was an older version. Like, yeah, their accessories sometimes are a little crazy.
Insane. You can sort that out, Microsoft. What is this? Just call them
I'm
all
also gonna,
Surface or call them all Microsoft. Just choose one.
I'm also going to just point out that Swift pair and making this in the OS and all that, which would obviously translate to whatever Windows Core OS and Windows Lite is sort of necessary for mobile devices, right? Like
Yes.
it's the expectation on how basically kind of smartphones kind of work. So that should be a little hint there, I think, is part of the reason why they may be looking at this stuff too.
Other updates. So that's basically the only actual native change to the operating system. There's other app changes. Sniffer Sketch received an update to do some other stuff that no one cares about. And that's basically it for this build. So yeah, not a lot of movement on 20H1. I'm worried 20H1 is done and nothing's happened. Like, we got a new Cortana and that's it. That's
Right.
I think if that's true, and if they really are done adding features to 20H1, I think that might be because a lot of the focus has been on the Windows Core side. Because, like I said, I think Windows Lite is supposed to be RTMing with 20H1, so I would guess that's kind of a priority. Windows 10's mature enough to sort of miss out on new features. Because, let's be fair, what other new features other than sets would you add to Windows at this point? I can't think of any really
Yeah,
that are of a priority.
they modified the notifications and they've basically tied it up like I think a lot of
Yeah,
little things and annoyances. Um,
that's right.
and I think that's, game bar also got some improvements. So it's more about small improvements. Uh, and it seems pretty fine in terms of running it on hardware. I'm running at my main rig here and on some laptops. I've had no issues with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I did just realize, by the way, we are in September, and this update isn't expected to ship until April. So we actually do have quite a few more months of development left, unless they've sort of changed strategy and are planning to RTM in like December, which I
and
can't.
don't
I don't
forget,
see why they would want to do that.
who knows? They may talk about 20H1
Maybe, yeah,
at the Surface event.
yeah,
And once they announce new features, that's when the insider team goes, "Oh, by the
that's
way, here are these
true.
new things coming." Right?
That's a
They've done
good
that in
point.
the past.
They have
So
done it. They actually haven't done that in a while, but that they could do.
right.
They have done it before. So I'm actually hoping for that now. Hopefully that's what they're planning. But speaking of actual future builds and whatnot, this week references were spotted to, I'm gonna call it a 20H2 build, but it could be 21H1. We don't know yet. A night build 19480 was spotted in some reference somewhere, and there's been that's the first sort of hint at, there's another version of Windows coming after 20H1. The problem is we don't know if it's 20H2 or 21H1 because of the whole 19H2 thing. We still don't know if Microsoft is planning to make every H2 release like 19H2 or if they're going to go back to their old ways of 2 major feature updates a year after this. If they are going to go back, then this is 20H2. If they're not, then it's 21H1. If you could follow that, my brain stopped there. It was like, what? Also, the code names that I'm going to actually try to start using are the ones Microsoft are using internally. The elemental code names. So this one would be the manganese release, I believe. Yeah, that's fun. And that's basically it for this week's build news. Is there anything else? I don't think so. What's next? Versa 2. Hooray, we can finally talk about the hardware of the week.
So we both have the Versa 2. I've had mine for a little bit longer. And I like it. It's good.
that sounded
That's the
really
review.
convincing.
No, there's a lot to talk about actually. So we'll just go over it quickly. So compared to Versa 1, I'm going to summarize some of my review here. The big change, obviously, is the OLED display. It went from OLED or LCD to OLED, and it's a massive change. Like OLEDs on wearables, it just looks way better, right? The blacks are pure black now, and that works well here because there's still kind of a thick bezel on this device. Now, part of it sweeps away, and just like the Apple Watch does this too, which gives the illusion of thinner bezels, and you see this on phones as a strategy as well. But because of its OLED now, if you use like a watch face with a black background, which most of us do, you can't really see the border anymore, so you don't really notice that. But the OLED's really nice. It has Gorilla Glass 3. It's very smooth. It looks really, really good. A big feature that isn't talked about a lot, we don't know what they use for a processor. It's like a Cortex processor. It's kind of custom and all that. The processor has been upgraded, so it's faster. And I can tell you, it's significantly faster. Like the OS now is like instant. It just responds very quickly when I hit exercise. Everything just launches very quickly on it. And it's one of those things that it makes a big difference in everyday use. It just feels way, way better. There's also a microphone built into it now, which you can disable if you don't trust those things. It's right in the settings. And that also enables Alexa, which is the other big feature here, Amazon Alexa. Uh, Depending on how you
Can I
feel
just say,
about it,
just by the way, I haven't enabled that thing at all. I
it
just
works all
missed
right.
it, and that was it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Like especially if you have smart home stuff, you can then control your lights or your thermostat. So that works. You can also set reminders quickly with voice and all that. So if you like Alexa, it's cool. If you don't, you can keep the microphone on and disable Alexa. In fact, when you're setting it up, you have to opt in to Alexa, obviously. So it gives you the option right away. So it's pretty upfront about that. That microphone, though, is super cool because the other big feature, which I don't think gets enough attention, is for replies to notifications. So before you would have canned responses, which was kind of cool. You can now send emojis too, which is kind of neat. But then now you can hit the microphone button, speak into it. It does a little cool waveform so you know it's picking up your voice. And then it converts it to text, it lets you see it. You're ready, you hit send. And then even once you hit send, it gives you about a few seconds to undo it in case you made a mistake. This feature to me is absolutely huge because if you get a text message, you can now actually be like, give a real response instead of just like, okay,
Yeah.
yes, sounds good. You can actually now give a legit, and it works very well. Now, there's no speaker on it, so you can't take calls through it. You can answer a call, and it'll just answer your phone. So there's no speaker on here. So even when you ask Alexa something, it just gives you the results on the display, which actually is not a bad thing. If you're in a meeting, it kind of works well, right? So that's cool. The design is slightly changed too. I didn't think this was an issue, but when compared to the Versa 1, it actually is a completely different casing. It just sweeps away from the bottom now more. It's a tad thicker, though you can't notice it.
Does
Uh,
the just I've noticed as well the glass sort of curves more, right? It's a slightly
yes.
rounder curve on the edge, which actually makes quite a big difference. It actually looks more premium and feels more premium than
Yeah.
the first one does.
Yep. Yeah. If if you confuse Versa 1 for an Apple Watch, Versa 2 will be even more confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much looks like that. Um, and there's some new it's running a newer version of the Fitbit OS, so you get the sleep score stuff and some benefits there. It does have Spotify now Spotify is a controller app, meaning you can't download your Spotify playlist to the device even though it does have memory on board, and that bums out a lot of people, I understand, but that's exactly actually how it works on the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch is just the same thing. It's
Here's
just a front controller for the phone itself.
here's what I will say about the Spotify controller app on Fitbit. It sucks.
Yeah,
It's
well, this
really
gets
slow and it just doesn't connect most of the time.
Yeah, and this gets to, and in my review, I point this out. It's like, so who should buy this thing, right? It's if you're into fitness, I go to gym 5, 6 days a week. I lift weights. I do low intensity, steady state. I go for 30-mile bike rides, usually on the weekend. I go hiking. So for me, it's really good. I think it's good for beginners, people who aren't into exercise, are looking to get into exercising. It's a great device for you because it's very easy to access and read the information, understand what's going on. You can use the guided workouts, which is cool. I consider myself to be intermediate to advanced. I've been going to the gym for a decade. I'm pretty athletic, but I still get a ton of benefit from it. And I don't like Garmin. If you're a hardcore runner, I get it. You want Garmin. It's got standalone GPS. This still is connected GPS. That doesn't bother me. I always have my phone with me, but I know for some people that's a deal breaker. That's also, though, what keeps the battery life really good on this, which is 5 to 7 days. And I say 5 to 7 because it depends. If you use it for going to the gym a lot, you're going to use a little bit more battery life. If you don't, just use it as a wearable, you probably can get 7 days.
But
But
I got 7 days quite easily on the original Fitbit. At IFA, by the way, I did bring my charger, but I don't think I charged the watch once.
Yeah.
And we were there for 7 days or 6 days, and it survived the whole week. But keep in mind that's not doing any exercise based stuff. If you're just using it as like just a smartwatch to check notifications and the time,
and your
then
footsteps and all that.
the battery life is excellent.
Yep. And it's because of that, because it doesn't have standalone GPS. Plus, it keeps the price down to $199, which is not insignificant. The price points on these things is very crucial. Yeah, they could have made this $250 or $300, but now you're running right up against the Apple Watch, and that's not a fight I think they want to have right now, because the Apple Watch is, it's an expensive premium device. It's $400. But that $400, I tell you, it's really good hardware, right? So if you're going to start to approach that price point, you better bring your A game. And the fact is, as a smartwatch, don't buy this because you want a smartwatch to run apps on.
Right.
It's not a great experience. Yeah, I have Uber on it, and it's good in a pinch. It's kind of neat to play with. But having said that, I have an Android Wear watch, which runs apps. Terrible. I do not really advise buying Android Wear because it's not even that supported by Google. They're not even developing it much. I do have the Apple Watch Series 4. It's an amazing smartwatch. It's just an engineering feat. Having said that, I barely run any apps on that too. I run these little micro apps once in a while. I use it for my Tesla, but I'm not really using this as a computer thing. But still, if that is something that interests you, you got to buy an iPhone and get an Apple Watch. It's the only solution. Android Wear, I find supremely disappointing, especially for the costs. But no, the Fitbit's it's really good. I should also point out the always on display. That's another big deal.
Do you have that enabled?
I don't. So
Me neither.
I did. I used it for quite a few days. So what it does is you turn it on, and it just when your wrist goes to twist and normally turns off, the always on display comes on. It's white and it has two forms, digital or analog. It works well, but you now need to press the button to wake up your device. So it's kind of an extra step versus the raise to wake. It looks good, and for a lot of people who are trying to convert from an analog watch, this is a nice step. For some people, it's just super critical. I will say, though, it totally destroys battery life. You're going to cut your battery life probably in half.
Oh,
by
really?
using this
Wow.
thing.
Yeah,
So
that was my biggest. I didn't enable it originally because I just didn't want to risk it. Because the reason I get the Fitbit more than anything is the battery life. I like to wear the watch and forget about it, and then charge it once I jump in the shower on a Sunday. It's like that's the only time I really want to worry
you
about
could
it.
still do that. I mean, mind you, I say in half, so you're still looking at 2.5 to 3 days of battery life. That still will blow away the Apple Watch and any Android Wear device.
But
so
it's still too short for me, Dan.
and if you do throw it on the charger while in the shower, you'll probably be fine day to day. So it's a cool option. I'm glad it's there.
Yeah.
But I'm used to raise to wake. I don't need always on. It's not a big deal.
I'm the same. So yeah, my impressions are basically matching yours. I actually really like it. I appreciate the hardware improvements. I like the fact that they've gotten rid of the logo on the front now.
Yes.
And so it's now more uniform and clean. Although I'm convinced that the bezels aren't uniform across all four sides. I'm pretty sure the top one is slightly bigger than the bottom one. But maybe that's just me, my eyes playing tricks on me. But yeah, I like I actually do. I don't mind the simplification of removing two buttons and just having the one because I don't think I ever use those other two buttons.
That's another change, right? So there were 3 buttons before. Now there's a single button.
Yeah.
It's weird, but I don't disagree with it. Those 2 buttons were on the right side. The problem I had was at the gym, I would lift weights and my wrist would arc back. Yeah. And I would sometimes hit those buttons and pause my workout. I'd be like lifting dumbbells like middle. I feel like, and I'm like struggling. And I feel like it vibrates. I'm like, damn it, it just stopped. They put the weights down. No, go back. I don't have that issue anymore. So in one way, it solved a problem for me. Yeah. I also think they did it because fewer moving parts as buttons equals fewer things that can break.
And I assume it made room for the microphone that sits on that side now as well.
Good point, Joe. Very good point. Yeah.
Yep. The software improvements are nice. Like there's now like a sort of control center almost if you swipe down a notification center, which
it's weird though.
Yeah, it gives you access to your quick access to the music control, Alexa, or Fitbit Pay, depending on what you've got enabled as the quick action for the main hardware button. And then you've got a further quick settings sort of UI, which enables do not disturb mode, a night mode apparently, which I don't know what that does, always on display, brightness, and raise to wake. So that's kind of nice. Although I don't see why that can't be added to the original Fitbit. That seems like
they probably will.
I hope they're not doing like hardware exclusive things like that.
No, they usually backtrack on the firmware stuff.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's a device for me, right? It's someone's asking, have I tried the Galaxy Watch Active 2? No, I have not. I have heard good and bad things about what Samsung does.
Tizen.
So it's running Tizen. Yeah, not Android Wear. One of the downsides I've heard is with Samsung, you need to install 4 apps or something like that to manage the thing. Here's the thing for me, and it's like I'm just hooked on the fitness stuff in Fitbit. It's also got the best sleep analysis software I've ever seen. And I say that, and some of you have heard this before, I used to be a polysomnographer, a person who administered polysomnographs, aka sleep studies in a hospital. I did it for many years, and I would do CPAP therapy, watch brainwave. Like, so I'm familiar with the sleep stages, and this thing, it's collecting some very good data that makes a lot of sense. And I got into a little Twitter fight with someone about this. Like, one way you can easily gauge this, it's like, you basically, self-reporting is a huge thing in the medical field. It's actually very important. That's why doctors always ask you to talk about how you feel, because without that, you don't know. But it's like, when you sleep well, like, you kind of know it, right? And it's nice to like look at, data then and go, yeah, you got this amount of hours of sleep. You were in REM for a long time, which is average, and you also, if you didn't sleep well, you usually feel it. Your brain is like off, right? And if you look at data and your data is like, yeah, you didn't sleep very well, it's like, oh, it confirms that. Now, that's not just important just to confirm what you know, right? It's important because it helps you as a tool to better figure out how to improve your sleep. I can tell you, like, I enjoy a fine beer sometimes, or a glass of wine. And like a lot of people, I drink it at night. And how alcohol affects your sleep is super important. It's really bad for sleeping. And it's confusing to people because you tend to fall asleep easily on alcohol. It's just, once you're asleep, your brain doesn't hit the necessary sleep stages, which is why you don't feel good when you wake up the next morning. But looking at or exercising too late, right? Some people exercise, I exercise at nighttime, but it's been shown if you exercise a couple hours before you go to bed, you may actually have trouble falling asleep because now your brain is kind of active, right? So you can sort of use these as tools to help better your life and understand, it's like, oh, I need to get 7 hours of sleep to feel good. That's when my sleep score is solid. And so you can, that's what it's so useful. And I just find the data that Fitbit collects. Like, I have here the Honor Band 5, which I still got to review too. This is a $40 device, but it too has actually advanced sleep study or sleep recording software on it, which I was really impressed with on paper. In reality, I would wear both of these to bed, and it was night and day. Fitbit actually figured out when I was going to sleep, not whereas a lot of devices figure out when you lay down. And those are two different things, right? You could be in bed for 40 minutes and not sleep. The Fitbit, I always find, is accurate in detecting that, whereas I don't find any other device. So this is why I stick with Fitbit. I just find the data it collects easy to read. And now they have the sleep score thing, which Zach and I had fun with on Twitter, which it's not just looking at your brainwave, or not your brainwaves, but your sleep stages, and going like, yeah, here's your hours of sleep. It's giving you a physical, like an actual score, 84, 86. And now you can have a better understanding. And you and I were having a fun competition about who has the better sleep score.
I've still not hit 90.
Yeah, I've hit 86 is my highest.
Mine's 88 still. I'm not,
and then Michael Fisher, 89. aka Mr. Mobile, came in with a 92.
He sleeps great, didn't he? Look at him.
Yeah, exactly. So, but this thing is like, but I'm also, Michael Josh, he's a YouTuber I'm friends with, and him and I were hanging out at IFA, and we're talking about, and also in China, about how he sleeps terribly. It's like, I'm always tired. I don't feel well. And then he got the Fitbit. And when you look at his scores absolutely reflect that. He's getting 50s and 60s. Wow. So we're trying to figure out he can sleep better, right? Like what he's doing wrong and stuff. So this is why I stick with Fitbit. And Apple Watch doesn't do sleep. It just doesn't. Android Wear, I haven't really tried to do sleep stuff because I just don't believe in it. I just don't feel like they're going to do it.
Even Google doesn't believe in it. Did you read those reports this week that Google tried to make a Pixel Watch back in 2016? Yes,
they couldn't do it.
And they were like, this sucks.
This is too hard.
Just destroyed
it.
Yeah,
this is too hard. Yeah, they couldn't do it. And so they didn't want to sully the Pixel name, so they didn't make a Pixel Watch, which is just mind-blowing. And credit to Fossil. I think the Fossil hardware is brilliant. And that's why you buy an Android Wear watch. Some of the hardware is really nice. I just found their software a total mess. But there you go. And so Versa 2, I recommend it. If you're coming from Versa 1, it's a complete side grade. I can't really go tell you to drop $200 on it. However, if you're looking at the Versa 2, you don't mind parting with $200. It's all improvements. Like
Yeah.
it's a better device. You'll be
Is
very
this
happy.
is the screen bigger, or is that just because the logo's gone that it looks bigger?
Yeah, I think it's just
It seems a tiny bit bigger to me, but I don't know.
yeah, they don't really release some of that data.
I know. I guess I could just pull out a tape measure, but
What's also cool, I'll also say the accessories for Fitbits in Versa 1 and
they're very
Versa
good.
2 are awesome.
Yeah.
Just go on Amazon. You'll find any band you want for like $6 to $8. It's pretty awesome. So
Yeah.
that's also nice to have that ecosystem built in.
Dan,
Whew.
can you tell me about Dragonfly? What a
Yeah,
cool
I'll try to
name.
keep this short too. Yeah, Elite Dragonfly.
Yes.
HP held an event this week. It was very cool. They announced a new laptop. It comes out in November. It's geared towards the high-end premium business market, but not just pure business. It's for what is described as nomadic workers. It's this specifically aimed more at the millennials and people in their 30s, but basically anyone else, right? But these are people who don't really work from home. They don't stay in the office all the time. They're in coffee shops. They're traveling around. This is becoming increasingly more important in business. This is the worker. HP pointed out how there's, for the first time, I believe, 5 generations now of business people in the world like work at the same time, and so they're trying to address these different markets. This device, well, a lot of people don't know, is HP has 2 main premium lines. One's the Elite Book series, which is business and enterprise, and the other one is Spectre. There's also Envy, below that. Those are 2 different departments actually at HP, which is why those laptops sometimes look very different. It's also why the Elite Books use precision touchpads and Spectres do not. But more news on that coming up in a couple of weeks, which I've been talking about for a while. So they are converting finally. So happy. The Envy line is the first to get those. So that's very cool. But anyway, so there are 2 different departments. This laptop is basically those 2 departments, from what I understand, kind of coming together to create a device. So it's both businessy in the sense that it has a full HDMI port. It has a full USB-A port, 2 Type-C ports, and LTE connectivity, as well as Intel V Pro support, right? That's all business stuff. But it also looks super sweet. It looks like something out of the Spectre line, which is just like it's kind of subtle but flashy at the same time. It comes in this what they call Dragonfly Blue, which is iridescent. It's like this like crazy semi almost sparkly blue, but it's not really sparkly. It's really nice looking. The whole thing is blue. They said it tested very well with men and women. It was a very neutral color, but it also stands out while looking classy. It also runs Intel 8th Gen because it's vPro. Intel 8th Gen vPros were actually announced in April and May this year. So these are actually new chips. They're not 10th Gen. But they did work now very closely. HP worked very closely with Intel on this Project Athena thing for better battery life, instant on, all this kind of stuff. So this thing weighs 2.1 or 2.2 pounds or slightly under 1 kilogram. So it's very light. It's a 13-inch laptop. It's a X360 device. It's a full convertible. So it's one of the lightest, thinnest convertibles on the market, or that's coming to the market right now. 13-inch display. You can get up to 4K, 400 or 500 nits HDR. You can also get their SureView privacy protection or just a full HD, depending on what you prioritize. It's supposed to get 16 hours of battery life. That's, the mobile mark thing, right? That's obviously too high. But in my past experience, when a company says like 16 and a half hours, which is not very often, the real world will probably be 8 to 10 hours of like real actual, you're using this thing as a serious laptop, which is pretty good. It could even be more than that. There's a version with a larger battery. That's a 38 watt hour battery. There's a version with a 56 watt hour battery. That's supposed to get up to 24 and a half hours. Again, don't take that literally. But if that's true, I would expect this thing to get 15 to 16 hours of real world hardcore usage, which is very impressive considering it weighs 2.2 pounds, 1 kilogram again. So it starts at $1,500. It does have inking support, obviously. It comes with a leather sleeve with the pen. This is just, it has quad speakers, 2 top firing and 2 on the bottom. HP's been a big fan of doing this design lately. You can get optional LTEs, I mentioned, 4G, Cat 16, I want to say, is gigabit. So it's a world device. It will be on sale globally in November, but it's just It is 16 by 9 aspect ratio. I know someone's going to point that out. It is 16 by 9. Sorry, no 3 by 2 or 16 by 10. That's the only downside. But it's a really sweet keyboard. It's what HP is known for recently. It's got a full giant precision touchpad. Yeah, this thing is. I'm very very excited about getting this because they do some really nice devices. I use the EliteBook 1040 G5 as one of my main devices. So I'm very excited about seeing this thing. It's a really cool creation. But yeah, is it
Great.
sexy? Someone's asking. I would say it's yeah. I would describe this if I had to as being sexy. Zach, did you get to see the photos and
I
video of
did.
it?
It does look very sexy, you're
Yeah,
right.
it's a yeah, it's an interesting creation from HP. Who I think have been, and they got some other stuff that's coming along too. That's going to be pretty interesting. They're doing pretty well though as a
I think,
company.
to be fair, I think the whole Windows PC industry is about to be turned on its head with this Windows Core stuff.
I'm so proud. Like every time I'm meeting with Dell and HP and Lenovo and of course now Microsoft, like I'm just like I just want to like pinch their cheeks. I'm like, you guys are doing so well. Like, but what's really cool about it, it's like they're all doing their own thing. Like when
Yeah,
you and I've said this before, you look at a Dell XPS and whether you like it or not, but when you look at that, that's a Dell XPS device. They have their own design, their own things they're good at, right? Those the IXO displays, the micro bezels, like they first did that, right? That XPS 13 2-in-1 looks just amazing. When you look at the Lenovo stuff, whether it's the X1 Carbon or the new Yoga C940, like you're like, oh, that's a Lenovo device. Like it absolutely looks like their own design language, and it has like the C940 has that huge speaker bar, right? And they're
yeah.
using 4K displays with HDR, premium metal design. You look at what HP's doing, right? They have their own design language. It's very unique. Like everybody's doing their own thing. And I look at them all and it's sort of like it really is tough to choose because they each have their strengths and advantages, but they're all like really cool devices. I finished my review for the XPS 15 this week. Go check that out on Windows Central. 4K OLED Core i9 1650 GPU. Like it's a ridiculous laptop, and there's really not much else on the market like it besides the Razer Blade 15. Um, so it's a good time, and we're about to, as you mentioned, dual screens, foldables, Windows Core OS. Like we're about to hit this new epic for other types of mobile computing that I think is going to be super interesting.
Yeah, it's a very exciting. The next year, the next 12 to 18 months are going to be very, very, very interesting if you're a Windows/Microsoft fan. I think.
Yeah, and I think just in computing in general, like we're getting into some really wild tech. Wait till, I still think AR glasses will break in the next 5 years. I think that will
Mm.
be a thing. We're going to be talking
And
about
who will be
wearables.
there first, Microsoft or Apple?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but there we go. I think that's enough for this podcast. We're running late again because of my ranting. I apologize, or you're welcome. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to do some Q&A with the audience right now for our live audience. Again, we record this every Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, mixer.com/Windows Central, or you can join us on YouTube, where we also broadcast this live. The recorded portion does not include the Q&A, so I apologize for that. That's the benefit if you show up live, as we always appreciate our audience who does join us there. As always, follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, or Zach at ZACBOWDEN on Twitter as well. And of course, we'll be live at October 2nd in New York City. We will be live blogging and doing that whole event, so make sure you stick with us for that, as I'm sure the run-up to that event will probably see a few more leaks and info coming out, so make sure you follow us there. As always, thank you for listening, though, and we'll talk to you later. Take care, everyone.
Great.
Great. All right, someone's asking about the ZenBook Pro Duo. Does it improve productivity, or is the second screen just a gimmick? Good question. Michael Fisher, Mr. Mobile, has this device right now. I'll be getting it after him. I to give you kind of a quick response. He was like, "Do you want it first?" I'm like, "No, you go ahead." Like, I think it's an interesting device. I'm not completely sold on it being. I think it'll be kind of useful. Here's the thing. I'm not a huge fan of Asus. I find their hardware just, it's just not there, right? It's not on the quality level of HP, Dell, Lenovo, or Microsoft. And sometimes they come in a little bit cheaper. So I joked around with Fisher, and this is really unfair to Asus. I'm like, I'll be excited when like someone else makes that laptop. So, and that's a real jerk thing for me to
It
say,
really is.
but it's kind of true. But I'm going to give it a fair shot. I could be completely wrong on it. I think, but again, I do appreciate them creating it and taking the risk because who knows? It could be really neat. I think getting that word niche again, though, I think for someone like for Fisher, he may appreciate more for, say, video editing. And it's kind of where it's geared for the productivity creation people who need that second screen to act as like, for waveforms or video editing and stuff like that. So I think from that perspective, it could be very useful. For my work style, I'm not convinced it's going to be there. And part is the trade-off, right? Because it doesn't have a palm rest anymore. Like
Can't
it comes
you get
with,
like a palm with accessory for it and stuff?
well, it comes with like a palm rest, but that's only obviously when you're going to use it on a table, right?
Yeah,
Then you
yeah.
put it in, which is fine. But for my work style, I'm not sure I'll get a lot of value for it. But it could be. I could imagine using Slack down there. I think it's an interesting idea. I just don't love Asus's hardware. So and they don't give us review units. We had to buy this thing. So Asus is they don't endear me too much.
Has Dan had a chance to update the Lenovo YogaBook C930 with the e-ink screen? Why would he?
Oh, yes. That's a good question. Someone mentioned that. Yes. I took a photo of that too. I
Why?
forgot to
What's
share that.
changed? What's the update do?
They've added what looks like pressure sensitivity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so this is the yoga book.
That's cool. Yeah, the two
so
the two screens.
yeah, so when you draw on it, which I don't even know where the pen is for that thing. Do I have a
I
pen
like
for
how
it?
you're looking to the floor.
Because I have all my stuff on my floor. I have a lot of laptops on this floor here. Um, but it's yeah, so there was an update. I took a photo of it. I'll try to throw it on Twitter later. But basically it looks like they added inking sensitivity, which basically if you're going to use it as an artist, it gives you you can do thick lines and thinner lines. I haven't really tried it myself yet, but yeah, that was an update. I still hate the fingerprint reader on that device. It's such a nightmare. It's like it's the worst fingerprint reader I've tried in the last few years.
Wow.
But every time I open it, it's still a pretty rad device, right? It's just like, I don't know, it's fun to have.
Yeah. So everyone's saying looking forward to your Galaxy Book S review. Do we know when we're getting that in?
Nope, of course not. No word from Samsung.
One of those products that they never release.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it'd be nice. Hopefully, as soon as I get it, though, I'll try to do a quick review on that one.
Other than the Samsung Book S, was there any other Windows on ARM device at IFA? I don't believe so. Yeah, I wouldn't. I guess next year's. I don't know.
IFA had a specific theme, which I think we talked about, which was
Creators.
it was about creator devices.
Yeah.
These big power. It was the opposite of mobile. It was these big 15 and even 17-inch, just power station laptops with Quadro 5000 graphics, and all. It was just that's what the focus was, and that was the push. And we've seen this before where there's certain themes sometimes the industry lands on. Part of this is because NVIDIA is pushing that, and NVIDIA has money to spread around. And so I think it was a concerted effort to sort of everybody get those devices out there. But we'll probably see other devices come out for more mobile stuff over the next few months. Any news on high-end Ryzen-powered Windows laptops in 2020? Nope. All I can tell you is OEMs are definitely warming up to AMD. They see them now as a viable option, and I think you've seen it now. Lenovo's already, they have two lines of laptops, T40, I think, and like a T4085. And they differentiate about the 5. Basically, if it's a 0, it's Intel. If it's a 5, it's AMD. So you're seeing companies experiment more with this, but I haven't seen too much in the consumer space with AMD. But the companies are open to AMD and are testing them. So,
what hardware are you guys most excited for in 2020? Centaurus would obviously be one of them. I'm actually just excited for foldables in general, whether they be Android phones or Windows PCs. I'm curious to see where this category goes. And I think 2020 is when we're going to start seeing that sort of flourish a little bit more.
Besides HP updating their Spectre line, who else are you expecting to release new laptops before the end of the year? That's a good question. I don't think nothing major from Dell. You already know their big push will be the XPS 13, 13 2-in-1, and of course the XPS 15, which are all now available. And HP has Dragonfly and maybe some new Spectres coming out. I don't know. And Lenovo has already kind of announced all their stuff too at IFA, so they had a lot. Then they have Microsoft, right? So that's the big push. I think everybody's kind of cleared the way here for Microsoft. And then you'll see CES. You'll see a bigger push for some new laptops at CES. So how would we react if Windows Lite was called Lumia OS? I mean, I don't have a reaction because it will never happen.
But my reaction would be, okay, so where's the tie-in? Because you're using a product brand from a smartphone line, but there's no smartphones coming. So I want to know, understand your thought process here right now, please.
What would the cost of Centaurus be? No idea.
I've got to guess it. Since it's a Surface device, it's going to be even more expensive than it deserves to be for what it is.
That's I wouldn't say deserves to be.
Maybe it deserves the wrong term.
I mean, they do command a premium price.
Yeah, they did it on purpose, though. There's loads of reasons why they do.
They do that so their OEM partners can then come in and be like, ours is $200 cheaper. And that's the way it's supposed to work. I think it'll be expensive.
I think it'll be probably it's 1,500 to 2K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too, 1,500, 1,400. I mean, you are talking dual displays, so that you got to have that.
There's probably going to be like a super engineered hinge mechanism that's the first of its kind as well. It's going to be a lot to it, I think.
Yeah, 1,400.
Do you think that the leaked start menu design without live tiles could make it into 20H1? I don't know. It's very possible that this is a start menu that Microsoft is planning to ship on desktop, Windows 10 that exists today. But that's also the start menu we're expecting to see in Windows Lights. It could be exclusive to Windows Lights, and since it's a universal element, it just runs on both OSs already anyway, with no plans to actually ship it on Windows 10. Or I could be entirely wrong, and they actually do plan to ship it on Windows 10 as well. And maybe we'll hear more about that on October 2nd.
Can we expect Surface Pro to continue to come in black? It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how the blacks have sold.
I think they've sold quite well. I think a lot of people chose the black.
Possibly, but I've also seen a lot of recent Surface commercials on TV for Surface Laptop. I saw the Mac ones, which are kind of funny, but they never show the black ones anymore. So I don't know. It's
don't know.
It depends on two things, I guess. One, how well they sold, and two, if people had issues with the chipping, right? So that was a concern. I think they'll keep it around. I think they will, but honestly, I have no idea.
Are you guys walking all main hardware trade shows around the globe throughout the year? Which ones do you try to attend? So, between us, I think Dan goes to most of them. I go to, I've been to IFA. That's the only trade show technically, but I also go to the Microsoft ones where I can.
Yeah, I mean, starting off in January, it's CES. Then end of February, beginning of March is Mobile World Congress. And then it's Computex in June. And then it's IFA in September. And then Microsoft event in October.
We don't go to the Apple or Google ones because they don't invite us.
So I go to all of those. Let me see if I go to Computex again. I don't know. I feel like I could have not gone to Computex. If I do go to Computex again, I'll just be for a couple of days instead of 6.
Is Windows 10s dead? I think it's fair to say that the Windows 10s idea hasn't done too well. I think that's going to evolve with Windows Lights. I don't think you're going to see a reinvigorated push for Windows 10 in S mode. But I think that same sort of idea will just continue with Windows Lights. So the idea is not dead, but the actual the current existing way in which it exists is dead. Yeah,
we've always said that Windows 10s was a band-aid. It was a temporary solution to meet with for education in certain markets where there was a more restrictive version of Windows that they could deploy and control. It was never meant to be a permanent solution. It was meant to be the holdover until Windows Lite comes to market, which has all the stuff built into it. It's it's meant for that world, just like what Chrome OS is, right, for education. That's how I've always viewed it, and I think that's still the case. So I think, as Windows Lite comes online, you'll hear less about Windows 10s because it wasn't meant to be a permanent solution. Just like Microsoft is clearly going to try to shift what we know as Windows 10 to, and people are going to get mad at this, to more legacy devices, or I could say traditional devices, right?
Or for
You,
power users. Yeah.
yeah, for business
Yeah.
and laptops and
And
desktops, it's
gamers.
going to be for that. We're going to push this new version of Windows towards new form factors, lighter, thin client computing, education, and these types of first line workers. And it's going to be there because full Windows never made sense for some of those markets. It was just, but that's all they had. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that's what we'll see happen.
What do you think Centaurus will be called? Surface what? We've had this discussion before. Like, it could be called anything. I'd be happy with Surface Carrier or Surface
Note.
Folio. Surface Notes, I'd also be there for. Although Note, I think, makes more sense if it was a pocketable device, which this isn't. But yeah, Note, I could see. They're probably going to call it something weird, though, like Surface Life or Surface Journal. Oh, Surface Journal. I'd
I
buy
don't know.
Surface Journal.
I mean, Surface Book is pretty like.
Yeah, but they've got a Surface Book.
Right. I'm just saying that, but that's sort of like I felt that was pretty on the nose. Just like Surface Laptop is pretty.
No, I see what you mean. Yeah, but they've also got. Remember, this is the company that did Surface RT, so
Yeah,
you
but
know
that was a different
they've
market.
had their moments.
Yeah. Oh, totally. But I feel like this would be a very straightforward name. I feel like it could be Surface Note, Surface Fold. The only problem with both of those is uh, Samsung uses both of those.
Yeah, Surface.
Surface Journal. Surface
Yeah, I think
Journal.
if I had to choose one, Surface Journal would be the one I'd choose. That's the one
Yeah.
because I think that.
Because when you hear that, it automatically tells you this isn't a laptop.
Right.
This isn't a tablet.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Surface Journal? Like
I think that is the best name for it. For what it is,
yeah,
that's the best name for it.
that changes the expectations dramatically.
The question
now
is,
you
does
have to really
Microsoft have the trademark for Surface Journal?
right.
Because that's what it comes down to. They name things that they have trademarks for. If they don't have the trademark, they won't call it that. Which is why I don't think they're going to call it Skylight. Because I looked everywhere for as far as I could tell that Microsoft does not have the the trademark for Skylight.
Surface Moleskin will be what it emulates, but I don't think they'll call it that. They don't have a trademark on Moleskin, obviously.
Yeah.
And Moleskin, I think, is a terrible name.
Yeah,
like, I get
too.
it sticks around. Like it's just like what? That's a moleskin? Oh, that's terrible. Surface Origami is terrible. Sorry. Surface Half is also terrible. See, these are all terrible names, people. It's a hard thing to come up with these names. And like I said, whatever they call Windows Lite, whatever they call this device, half the people will like it, half will hate it.
So I have a theory about what they're going to call Windows Lite, and it's a theory that I don't like because it seems like it's something Microsoft would do. But I don't think they're going to call it anything. I think so. There were rumors this week that Microsoft is planning to rebrand Office 365 as Microsoft 365.
Yeah.
I think that they might shove Windows Lite in as just part of that. It's a Microsoft 365 product, and
There's also the more pragmatic. They just call it Microsoft OS.
Yeah, they just got it. This is a device that runs Microsoft software.
Yeah, Microsoft OS. I could just totally see it called Microsoft OS.
Yeah,
like I can actually, to me, that'd be like, and I wouldn't be mad at that. That would be just again a very pragmatic name, right? Yep. But you get Microsoft 365 as the service, and you have Microsoft, and it runs on Microsoft OS. Like, it's boring, but it works, and it's probably not that controversial, right? I think people would be like, okay, it's Yeah. I mean, what did Apple call the OS for its iPad?
iPad OS.
Like, what's the OS called for their watch?
Watch OS.
Like, I mean, like, I don't think that stuff is pretty basic, right? So they just call it Microsoft OS. Like, I feel like
it would.
This
would be an easy answer if Microsoft were the only one who made Windows devices. It'd just be Surface OS, but that can't be a thing.
Yeah, right. A lot of people brought up Surface OS as a choice, but yeah, for that reason, this is definitely not meant to be only for Surfaces.
Yeah, this is for Dell and HP and everyone who wants to make one. They'll probably call it Windows. They're just going to do this. They're just going to call it Windows. I'm going to be really upset.
I'll be mad if they called it Windows.
They're going to call it Windows.
If they call it just Microsoft OS, I'll be
They're going to call it Microsoft Windows 1. That's what they're going to call it. I'm going to die. I'm like, you idiots.
Other people said that too. Like, just call it One OS. I'm like, I mean, maybe.
One OS actually, without the Windows part, I would. One OS is something I can agree with.
People also said Windows 1.
Yeah, I just don't call it Windows. Windows is so. I hate the name Windows. Go away, Windows. No one likes Windows. That's the
problem with calling it
problem.
Windows 1 is we have Windows 10.
That's why if they just call it One OS, then
So that's like, it's similar to be like Windows and Windows Lite.
So that's the thing. If they do decide to call this a Windows product, they can't call it a Windows and another number because they have Windows 10, and that just confuses the message even more so. And Windows 10 isn't going away with the launch of Windows Core OS. That's very important to remember. Windows 10 is still sticking around and it's still the primary Windows platform. So whatever they call this other thing has to be very obviously not connected to that, but also running simultaneously. They can't call it Windows 11 because that suggests it's the next version of Windows 10. They can't call it Windows 1 because then that's just a sort of weird thing. They've got to call it something that isn't Windows, in my opinion. They have to call it something else.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see how they decide to communicate this on October 2nd. I hope.
How's the Microsoft Store doing in London? I can't answer that, but I'm sure Zach may.
I mean, I've been there a couple of times. I mean, I haven't really needed to buy anything from Microsoft just yet. It seems every time I walk past, it seems to be pretty busy on the ground floor. At least I can't see up the stairs. But you know, people are mostly in there just to look at the big sports car they've got. But I don't know. I don't know if it's doing well or not. I assume it's doing okay. I'd hope so.
Someone's asking about multi-user support for Cortana. Yeah, I have no idea what happened to that.
It was a thing they were working on.
Yep. I don't know. I haven't played with Cortana in a while, which probably says a lot. But yeah, it will be interesting to even see if Cortana gets mentioned October 2nd.
Yeah.
Like
if they're doing a speaker, I guess they will. But otherwise, I don't see why it would show up.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting if in Windows Lite it's like more prominent or like plays a bigger role. But we've also talked about in the past about how they seem to be de-emphasizing the idea of a user agent
identity
personality for these things, whereas they're going to keep the AI machine learning smartness of it without it being like a thing, like a physical. Because I think agents are starting to, they're getting old. Yeah. Well, no other questions.
Okay, I guess that's the end. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next Friday for another episode. That'll be the last one before October 2nd. And then I guess we'll be doing some kind of podcast.
Yes, we'll probably do something right after the...
Yeah, we'd have to do something. But yeah, we'll see how that works and whatnot. But anyway, follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated and all that stuff, etc., etc. But until then, goodbye.